Welcome back, everyone. Today we're getting into something a lot of people face but don't really understand until they're in it: the chemical health assessment after a first-time DWI. If you've ever wondered what actually happens during the assessment, you're in the right place.
Yeah, this process can feel pretty overwhelming. A chemical health assessment is mandatory in nearly all jurisdictions after an impaired driving conviction and for reinstating a driver's license. The evaluation goes by different names, like substance use evaluation.
Right, and it's an interview conducted by a licensed alcohol and drug counselor, an LADC, or similar mental health professional. Their job is to evaluate your relationship with alcohol or drugs and decide if any level of care is necessary. So, let's break down what evaluators are actually looking for. What's covered in these assessments?
The assessment typically covers your chemical use history, frequency, volume, duration. They're also looking at tolerance and physiological markers, like whether you experienced memory blackouts or withdrawal symptoms. Behavioral and legal consequences matter too, so they'll ask about impacts on your job, relationships, and any prior legal issues.
Interesting. And this is more than a casual chat.
Yes, and evaluators aren't starting with a blank slate. They have access to the arrest report, your lab results, with your exact blood alcohol concentration, which is your BAC, and your full driving and legal history. In addition to the interview, there are collateral interviews with family members and a review of objective legal records, like arrest affidavits.
That brings up a huge topic: people trying to minimize their drinking to avoid treatment programs. How do evaluators detect that?
Clinicians are trained to spot defensive answering and deception. Here's a common scenario. Someone claims they had only 2 beers, but their arrest BAC was, say, 0.19. That's a mathematical impossibility. So, the evaluator either concludes you have unusually high tolerance, a sign of chronic heavy use, or flags you for active deception. Either way, this will not help your situation.
Wow, so downplaying could actually backfire. You'd think being vague would help, but it sounds like it has the opposite effect.
Yeah, that's a classic outcome. For example, if a client swears he only drank socially, maybe twice a month, but when his BAC came back at 0.22 and he said he felt fine that night, this may indicate a high tolerance.
That's a perfect example. Evaluators also use iterative questioning, right? Asking the same behavioral question in different formats throughout the session to catch inconsistencies.
Correct. Plus, they cross-reference your statements against public criminal records and arrest reports. If you deny drug use but your arrest report mentions paraphernalia, you're immediately flagged. Some people joke that lying to an evaluator is like lying to a polygraph that can read your arrest file.
Picking up on those legal records, how do evaluators actually use the arrest details to shape their recommendations?
They evaluate areas such as acute intoxication potential, biomedical conditions, emotional and behavioral conditions, readiness to change, relapse potential, and your recovery environment. Based on all the information gathered, they'll recommend a level of care, anything from a one-day educational class to intensive outpatient or inpatient treatment.
Before we move on to understanding how the report itself gets used, but first, a quick word from our sponsor.
If you're dealing with a DWI and need a chemical health assessment, Access Behavioral Change offers full evaluations and supportive alcohol and drug awareness classes to meet court, DMV, or employment requirements. Serving the Twin Cities Metro and beyond, they also assist with license reinstatement and court-ordered programs. Learn more at accessbehavioralchange.com.
Back to the assessment. It serves 2 different authorities. One is the criminal court. In Minnesota, county courts are legally required to order a chemical health assessment for anyone convicted of impaired driving. And the other is the Department of Vehicle Safety. They operate on the civil side and dictate the terms for getting your license back.
And those recommendations go to the court, usually through your attorney, and the Department of Vehicle Safety, right? So it directly affects sentencing and license reinstatement.
Correct. In Minnesota, for example, restoring your license requires completing the assessment, complying with all recommended treatment, paying a reinstatement fee, and potentially installing an ignition interlock device.
What about for the court?
It's recommended to get the assessment completed as soon as possible. A pre-court assessment allows you to choose your assessor, and this can help with the disposition of your case and can help you get your driver's license back sooner. If you wait too long, the county where you were sentenced takes over.
Got it. Now, one thing people often debate is where to get the assessment done. I've heard concerns about bias if you go to a treatment facility. What's your take?
That's a real issue. When an assessment is conducted by someone employed by a treatment facility, the assessments are geared toward an intake process, not for a legal situation.
So, seeking out an independent assessor could help avoid that.
Absolutely. Independent clinicians focus on establishing the lowest level of clinically appropriate care based on objective evidence. For someone with mild alcohol misuse, they're often more open to harm reduction or moderation education rather than strict abstinence-only programs.
Makes sense. And choosing an independent assessor can also keep the assessment more private, right?
Right. Independent assessments can often be managed privately, avoiding automatic integration into general medical records, which helps prevent insurance or employment complications down the line.
So, to everyone listening, have you thought about who you'd trust to do an honest evaluation of your situation? Honesty, preparation, and choosing the right assessor are your three big takeaways here. Understanding this process can really reduce that anxiety and help you stay compliant. In other words, knowing what to expect makes the whole experience less stressful.
Exactly. The assessment report itself is classified as private data, so it's confidential. But it must include a diagnosis of your chemical involvement, severity level, recommended care, and specific remedial actions, or an explanation if no action is recommended.
Right, okay. And to clarify, the assessor has to meet specific qualifications, correct?
Yes. If you're required to complete a chemical health assessment in Minnesota, you'll meet face-to-face with a qualified chemical use assessor who has the training and credentials required by state law. Depending upon your situation, it's recommended to find an assessor who has experience working with criminal defense attorneys and their clients.
This has been such a helpful breakdown. If you're facing a first-time DWI, knowing what to expect can really make a difference in how you approach this. Thanks for walking us through it.
My pleasure. It centers on being informed and prepared.